What's your glitch in the Matrix story? Redditor 1. When I was a kid, I was into magic tricks. I sat my parents down to show them that I could make a large bouncy ball disappear by dropping it down my shirt. The idea was that I'd catch it before it fell all the way through and pretend it was gone. I failed a couple times as I demonstrated it, the ball falling through my shirt and rolling to the couch each time. The last time I dropped the ball down my shirt, I didn't catch it and it never came out. I searched and I couldn't find it. My parents congratulated me and resumed to their chores. I never did find the ball. I stopped doing magic tricks. Redditor 2. We have a regular who comes into Starbucks almost every morning right when we open. I saw him walk in one time, said hello, then looked up again and he wasn't there. Then about 2 seconds later he walks in the door. I say hello, and he says hi and orders his coffee. I never skip my caffeine before work now. Redditor 3. I was about 8 years old or so and was on my bed playing Barbies. I was using my hairbrush to brush their hair because those plastic Barbie brushes were trash. Anyway, I was brushing the hair, then set the hairbrush next to me to reach for another Barbie. Reached back and the hairbrush was gone. No big deal, as I assumed it fell between the bed and the wall. Got on my stomach and peered down, nothing. No hairbrush. Looked under the bed, nothing. Shrugged it off and assumed it was wedged somewhere I couldn't see, so I went downstairs to the bathroom cabinet to get another hairbrush. Opened it, and the brush I was using was front and center. I moderately freaked out and ran outside because it was really startling. I still have no idea how or what happened. Redditor 4. My best story goes as such. I was in the car with my friend and his dad. Dad was driving, friend in passenger, and I was in the seat behind the passenger on the right-hand side. As we slowly pass a fire hydrant before pulling into my friend's driveway, I noticed that it looks as if half of the hydrant was a foot taller and off to the side a bit. Between the two halves was a shimmering digital cluster duck. It then quickly snapped back into the place before my very eyes. Thought I was just hallucination, until my boy up front mentioned it. What the duck was that he said. You see what I saw? The fire hydrant? He confirmed that we had seen the same exact thing. I just asked him about if he remembers it. He does. We call it the glitch. Redditor 5. Not as intense as others in here, but here goes. Was in the back seat of a taxi when the man on the radio goes, "You're listening to Galaxy 106.1. And then the name of the station comes up on the little radio screen in moving letters. First showing Galaxy, then moving to show Axie 106.1. I raise my eyes, and the license plate of the car ahead was Axie 1061. Redditor 6. This happened maybe 10 years ago. Me and my brother were playing Pokemon on our DS's. My mom was nagging my brother to take a shower, so he proceeded to do so. He left his DS on the bed next to me and I play my game just ignoring it. While shuffling around on the bed I knock the DS over and don't pick it up because I knew it would be there and it didn't seem urgent. My brother gets out of the shower, comes back to the room and asks where his DS is. I tell him it fell over, but he tells me it isn't on the floor. We start searching through the entire room and never find it. A couple years later we move out of the place. During the moving process I believed we would find it, but it never showed up. I'm mad about it too because he was playing my Pokemon Platinum, which I never beat to this day. Redditor 7. I have a very vivid memory from middle school, where I was hanging out in my yard with a friend and she described the entire plot of The Princess Bride to me in detail. Everything from the Dread Pirate Roberts thing to the Rouses. A couple weeks later, I watched the movie for the first time at an aunt's house and knew everything that was going to happen ahead of time. I specifically picked it out from her collection because my friend had described it to me and I was really interested in actually seeing it. After the weekend was over, I went back to the friend who had described it to me, and told her I had finally seen The Princess Bride. She had no idea what I was talking about. She had never heard of the movie or book and had no recollection of the plot when I described it to her. I knew she wasn't messing with me, because she was never able to keep a straight face for that long when she was kidding around. She truly had no idea what I was talking about and didn't remember ever having described it to me. Redditor 8. I'm engaged to a girl whose husband passed away before we got together. His name was also my name. Charlie. When he was 13, he had a lawn business ran by his friends and he was the boss. Leaded that searched for new yards to cut. I literally did the same thing, literally exactly the same. His favorite color was green as is mine. A lot of his favorite songs from when he was alive are my favorite songs. His daughter resembled a kid that could pass as mine. I could seriously go on and on about how strange this shit is, but these are a few of the things that are like, wow. He kind of looks like me also, but you gotta figure girls kind of have a type they like, so that part makes sense. Redditor 9, I was sitting at the table, home alone. Suddenly, I was physically shoved out of my chair. I never felt anything contact my skin, but I absolutely 100% felt a force applied to the side of my face, as if a hand that I didn't know was there was already resting on my skin, waiting for the moment to push. My head jerked to the side and I was knocked out of the chair, fell to the ground. Eeriest moment of my life, and I've never told anyone IRL about it. Redditor 10, was looking out a front window of our house when a white FedEx truck with the blue and orange lettering drove by at roughly the speed limit. The driver door was open, and the driver had a dusky complexion, was wearing the standard black shorts and shirt. Looked at my computer for about 30 seconds. Looked up, and a white FedEx truck with the blue and orange lettering drove by at roughly the speed limit. The driver door was open, and the driver had a dusky complexion, was wearing the standard black shorts and shirt. At this point, I am no longer convinced any of you are real. Redditor 11, when I am just thinking of something and an AD for it pops up on my computer or phone. Redditor 12, I was 4. I had a large stuffed bear. I was pretending to feed it raisins. Take a raisin, put it in the red velvet mouth, move the chin up and down. Of course, the raisin would fall to the floor, and I'd do it again. Ultimately, the raisin disappeared. I am 56 and remember it like was 52 years ago. Redditor 13, was watching TV and I lost the remote. Looked everywhere, under the cushions, behind the couch. I'd had a snack, so I checked the kitchen, couldn't find it. Figure I'll find it later, go back to lying on the couch and watching my show. Little bit later I'm channel surfing and I realize the remote is in my hand. I have no idea where it was, I literally found it in my hand. Redditor 14, my dad told me this from his childhood. He was born in 1922 and this happened when he was 12 years old, so the year was 1934. He lived in SE, Oklahoma in a place called Boggy Bottom. Extremely rural area, especially back in those days. Nothing around but lots of farmland for miles and miles. It was a hot summer night and he couldn't sleep, so he snuck out the window and went to a nearby cow pasture to look at the stars under a tree. He said that after a few minutes of stargazing, 3 lights showed up in the sky. They were moving in geometric patterns across the sky very quickly, first in one part of the sky, then another. He watched these lights in the sky for hours and their methodical, geometrically patterned movements. Then, they raced across the night sky and disappeared. Please note that my dad was always a stable, rock-solid guy, both emotionally and mentally. I believe that he saw what he saw. Redditor 15, one time I was at the hospital while my dad was getting surgery done. My grandfather and I were watching TV in the waiting room. Just then we saw a woman getting a drink from the vending machine in the waiting room, and as soon as we looked back toward the TV we saw the same woman wearing the same outfit on a live television program. My grandfather and I were stunned. All he could say was, how did she get there? Redditor 16, my wife and I got a dog from a shelter. It's a pug. Yep, he is an inbred monstrosity. Well, maybe 6 months into owning him. We are out walking. He goes underneath a porch. This dog is just under there for 15 minutes doing his thing while we are frantically trying to get his attention. He comes out with a slightly different coloration pattern on his back. He is fawn. And he came out much lighter. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell with pictures, but just by the fact we look at him every day. He was just lighter in color. He had a black and tan stripe down his back. Now it's more tan. It sounds weird, I know. Like, how can you tell such a small change or difference? Well, we could. So, that day we lost Otis 1.0 and got back Otis 2.0. Redditor 17, I was at my uncle's house when we decided to go on a hike. He lives in the mountains. We went down to the local pond, climbed a bit of a hill, and when we were done, we decided we were hungry. We started to walk back, when I saw a flock of birds just sitting in the air. Flapping their wings, but just sitting there. Completely still. I even stopped walking for a bit, to make sure they weren't just slow. The whole flock was just stuck. It was weird. Redditor 18, it was 3rd grade. During recess I was playing this game called Red Butt with my friends, where you just throw a tennis ball at the school wall and you catch it again when it bounces, you stop and throw it from that distance and get points, etc. Naturally, because it's the wall of a 2-story school, roofing the tennis ball was a very common thing. Hence I accidentally aimed too high and the ball was up on the roof, never to be found again. That day I had only brought a single tennis ball, and it was one of my favorites cause it was colorful and bouncier, and I had that ball for so long I could recognize it from a mile away. I definitely had roofed the thing, so eventually I just shrugged it off and went on with my day. When I got home and opened my backpack to get my books, there was the ball. Exactly how I'd remembered it had been, in good usable condition. I spent the rest of the day in an existential crisis and didn't even do my homework. I never brought that ball to school again. Redditor 19, sometimes I have deja vu and it's at the point where I realize it's happening and I know what's going to happen next and it all happens exactly as I remember. It's like I lived that moment before, but it doesn't happen like how most describe it, where they have the moment and feel deja vu. I know it's happening and I know what's going to happen next and it's all exact. Like I know what's going to happen before it does and I know what someone will say or do before they do it. It happens a lot and it weirds me the duck out. Redditor 20, my cat can open doors without touching them. I used to have my PC elsewhere in our house. I was a kid, 12ish. I had a cat, I still have her. She's neither an inside or outside cat, she's both. Now, the following happened many times. I noticed the cat meowing in our terrace. I let her in. Then I start walking towards the room's door to open it for her. The cat walks in front of me, sits down for like 3 seconds and the door opens. The handle doesn't move, the door just clicks and creaks slightly open. This happened more than 4 times. My parents didn't believe me in the beginning, and the cat kinda stopped doing this and I moved my PC to my own room so I didn't get to see this. But then, one day I noticed that my mom's room is locked when she's inside taking a nap. She never locked it before, so I asked her about it. She said she must lock it, otherwise the cat comes in the same way she left my room back in the day. I still don't know how the duck she does it. Redditor 21, I was packing up and getting ready to move to a new place. As I was taking apart my desk, I dropped a screw. I heard the screw hit the floor, but when I went to look for it, it was gone. There were no cracks in the floorboards it could have fallen into, and no vents on the floor. We emptied literally every single thing from that room, and never found the screw. It had simply ceased to exist. Redditor 22, I was cleaning 9/11 barges on Staten Island. The bottoms of them had to be vacuumed out where the excavators couldn't reach. I was wearing a Gumby suit, working a 6-inch vacuum hose. It was an emotional time for me because we kept finding blank plastic rectangles in the rubble. Those were people's ID badges that had been scrubbed blank between the airplane attacks, the excavators and loaders, and the excavator and the trucks and the barges. Suddenly, I found a very clean, legible ID of an Asian dude. May he rest in peace. I grabbed it and ran to the edge of the barge, to the ladder, and told my boss what I had found. In his best Chinese accent he said that he didn't order any egg foo young. I ran up the ladder, grabbed him and began to pound his face, with tears streaming down my own. All the 3-letter agencies milling about and watching. Suddenly, I felt an electric shock and I was on the bottom of the barge again. I hadn't been up the ladder yet. Redditor 23, well, I was learning a couple of fairly easy and cool magic tricks and I could do them pretty cleanly, so whoever had no close-up card magic experience could not tell how it is done. So I am practicing with one of my roommates, show him a couple of them, and then I take the pack, spread them in my hand and tell him to pick a card. As he is reaching for a card I tell him, nice pick, that 7 of spades. Now to make things clear, I wanted to do the old it was worth a shot joke, as haha you picked a different card, I was bullshitting. So as he is reaching for the card and I tell him to get that 7 of spades, he is like, oh ho, I am not dumb, I will pick some other card. So he randomly picks another one and behold, the 7 of spades. Now he is losing his shit acting like I am the Grand Master of the arcane arts. Well, that in itself is pretty cool, but that is not all. A couple of weeks later I am drinking beer in a park with another friend of mine and the topic of magic comes up. He shows me some tricks, I show him mine. Then I remember what happened with my roommate. So I told him the whole backstory, and as I am about to reveal what happened I was like, yo, it is better if I show you. So I am role-playing my past self and he is pretending to be my roommate. So once again told him to grab a card, he is reaching for it and I tell him that I told my roomie grab that 7 of spades, so he mimicked and picked another card and voila, he fucking picked the 7 of spades. It was around that time I got my Hogwarts invite, but I opted to join the Mages Guild instead. Probably the second luckiest thing that has happened to me. Redditor 24, my brother and I each had a dream about the same thing. We didn't mention it till a few days later as we both had drawn it somewhat and the pictures were eerily similar. We were around 10 and 13 at the time, so we didn't think much of it. Well, our dream just so happened to be an update for a game we played and was released a year or so later. We had never talked about it before the dream, and after the update we tried it out, only for it to look almost exactly during an animation like the picture. We can't really prove we drew it before it happened, but I have the picture somewhere cause we like to talk about it every once in a while. Redditor 25, when I was young I really liked magic and I saw a trick where a guy pushed a dime through the bottom of the cup. I tried it in my room for hours. I rubbed the dime with the back of a spoon and pushed it through the bottom of the cup. No holes, nothing. It just went through. I told my dad, but he didn't believe me. I don't know what the explanation is. It literally just went through. My kid brain could be misremembering, but yeah. Redditor 26, when I was 15 me and my friend were driving at night. We saw this old man with a long walking stick. He had bells hanging from everything. We get to my house. A 15-minute walk from where we saw him. We got out of the car and there he was just walking loaded with bells. It was freaky. Redditor 27, just the other day actually. I was at work making bread. We have this machine called a sheeter that rolls the dough into the loaf shape for you. My dough was a little dry, so I put one through alone to make sure they would all come out okay before I started the rest of them. But the one never came out. I looked all over the floor, up inside the machine and everything. I even took the machine apart to try to find where this dough ball went. Never found it. I'm afraid the machine is going to break in the next week or so and then I'll find it, haha. Redditor 28, I dropped one of my earrings on the bathroom floor and watched it slide into the corner. I washed my hands and went to pick it up, it was gone. I proceeded to look around as if it somehow magically moved itself. Nothing. We've moved since then and it was never found. Redditor 29, I had a vivid dream once about my sister asking me to look after her baby for her while she went and done something. I had never seen this baby before as it was a boy and she had a little girl. She told me his name was Taylor and I needed to protect him while she was busy. Woke up and thought nothing of it and didn't speak about it. I have weird dreams all the time so it doesn't bother me. Anyways, a few months later my sister tells us she is pregnant again. Yay! Again, didn't think anything of it. Baby was born and she had a boy and called him Taylor. Then I thought about it and freaked the duck out. I now feel like I should be constantly protecting him like Dream Sister asked me to. Redditor 30, for some reason girls don't talk to me. Redditor 31, not mine but my cousin once told me he and a friend of his both remembered hanging out and doing all kind of stuff during a summer. They remember the exact same things. The thing is, it was impossible, because his friend goes to his family's hometown every single summer and expended there the whole summer visiting his grandparents and family. Redditor 32, when I was a teenager we lived out in the country and there was a road with a big hill at the end of it that they didn't plow in the winter, so it was a prime spot to go sledding. We lived within walking distance, but for some reason on this day my mom drove us. After a few hours of sledding we were packing the sleds into our SUV. It had one of those back doors you lifted up and it stayed in place until you pulled it down. I was standing underneath the door looking into the back of our vehicle when the door came down and slammed shut. Where I was standing it should have come down on my head, but it was like it literally went through me to shut. I have always wondered how it managed to do that. Maybe I wasn't as far under it as I thought, but I distinctly remember being startled because I knew I was standing under it. Redditor 33, my mum threw the key to our shed down our stairs to my dad. Said key disappeared. She threw it down a straight flight of stairs to my dad in a 10 feet by 5 feet entrance hall. No weird hiding places, nowhere it could really have gone. But nonetheless, no key. We looked everywhere, even borrowed my cousin's metal detector to see if we could find it. Nothing. Ended up changing the padlock on the shed. 5 years later, my mother is doing some washing. Feels something hard on the leg of what had been my dad's work trousers and were now his old gardening trousers, the kind that motor technicians use, which have large outside pockets for notepads and slot for pens just above the knees. Checked the pockets, but there wasn't anything in them. Checked again, still something hard. Found out that it was in a small pocket for a pen. Worked it out of the pocket. Turns out it was this key. Somehow, my mother had thrown it down the stairs and landed it into this pocket, which was so small that you couldn't easily push it in by hand. No idea how she managed it. Redditor 34, I'm sure this has happened to most people. Have you ever looked for something you need and remember exactly where you last left it, but it's not there? If you persist in looking for the object, it eventually reappears exactly where you looked and knew it should be there. It seems to take an hour or so of looking everywhere else and going back to the same place several times before you find it. I think of this as the borrower's doing. It's weird. Either I have a blind spot and can't see something in plain sight, or it falls into some dimensional hole and will only return if I persist on finding it. Redditor 35, this lunchtime, driving a route I often take, stopped at a junction. This is in the UK. Looked right, saw no cars down the street, then left, then right again as I started to pull out. A car was only a few feet away from me. And we both braked. He was pissed off at me and blew his horn, and I could see him waving his arms. He seriously wasn't there when I looked right. I could see right down the street. The only explanation was, it was a gray car. His lights weren't on. It was a miserable day. His car must have been camouflaged against the road. Redditor 36, in 2017 my grandfather was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. At this point, he had basically given up on life. My grandmother had died 20 years prior and he was disabled and generally just had a rough go at life. We mostly kept up through text and email as he really didn't want me to witness his fast decline. Had surgery and a half attempt at allowing treatment. Checked on him almost daily, knew he wasn't doing well. He texted me and told me his time had come and not to come visit because he wasn't going to be alive. Having been partially prepared for this, I accepted this and had even told my partner that we were not going to see him again. A week later, my aunt called to let me know he had passed a few days prior. Torn family. It took this long for her to track me down. I told her I already knew because he had told me not to come. Later that day, I searched over and over for the text he sent me. I never got that text. Every fiber of my being knows that he told me though. Almost 2 years later and I haven't deleted our last conversation. Redditor 37, oh, I finally have an answer for one of these. So some backstory important for the story. A couple of years ago, I lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment. I am kind of a clean freak and kept my apartment in tip-top shape. I had a minimalist aesthetic, so I didn't even have a lot of stuff and didn't do well with any type of clutter. And I wore glasses. I have an extremely hard time seeing without them. I had recently gotten some new glasses, black silver Browland frames, and I had been wearing them for about 3 weeks at this point. I ordered them online and still have the confirmation email. Anyways, one Saturday around noon, I get kind of tired and decide to take a nap. So as per usual, I go sit on my bed, set my alarm on my phone, put the phone on my bedside table, take my glasses off and also put them on the bedside table like always, and then lay down. My alarm wakes me about an hour later, and I reach over to turn it off and grab my glasses. I couldn't feel them on the table, so I started feeling around for them on the floor in case I had accidentally knocked them off. Nothing. I'm immediately like WTF and fully get out of bed to try to find them. I start checking under my blankets and pillows, the head foot of the bed, around the table. Again, nothing. I start getting frustrated, because where could they be? There's nothing else in my room that they could be under. My room only has my bed and my bedside table. Also, I can't see well at all, which I assumed at the time was probably why I couldn't see them. They were probably in plain sight. So thankfully, I had my old pair of glasses in my closet that I haven't worn since I got my new ones. Important. They are a wildly different style from my regular ones too. They are a dark purple cat eye shape. Like there's no way they look the same. So I popped the cat eye glasses on and went back into my bedroom again to find my normal glasses. They were nowhere. Not a trace of them. So I start looking through my apartment for them. Nowhere. Now I'm really weirded out, so I call one of my friends over to help me look for them. Important to note that I see this girl at least 3 times a week. We're like sisters. She's over at my place all the time and vice versa. I've worn my new glasses around here at least 10 times. So she comes over and she's like, "Are you high? You're wearing your glasses." So I tell her that I lost my new ones, the black silver ones, and she acts confused like she doesn't know what I'm talking about. She says, "Did you just get them today or what?" So I ask her WTF she's talking about, and tell her that they are the new ones I've been wearing for almost a month now. She is again confused and tells me that I've been wearing these cat eye glasses, my old ones, for the last month and she hasn't seen me wear anything new. Now here's the scary part. I am adamant about having new glasses and was starting to get frustrated with her, when she whips out her phone and shows us a picture we took about a week ago while out at dinner. I of course remember the dinner and know that I had on my new glasses, because I remember thinking to myself that they matched my outfit, which was also black silver. But guess what, the photo shows me wearing the cat eye glasses. It's just impossible though. It really is. As soon as my new glasses arrived, I packed the old ones away in my closet, and didn't touch them until that day. I know I had been wearing them for the last 3 weeks. I remember my friend saying she liked them. I still had the confirmation email. But my friend, along with several other people I saw while I was wearing them, all said the same thing, that they'd never seen me wear any new glasses. They completely vanished. I never found a trace of them, even after nearly tearing apart my apartment in frustration. I had to go see a counselor for a few weeks after. TL, doctor, new glasses vanished when I took a nap, and friends claim I never had them and proved it with pics. Had to go see a counselor. Redditor 38, I can make what I say nonchalantly without thinking really happens 75% all the time. I have rules to be able to exploit this power. 1. It has to be super realistic. 2. I have to really believe it will really happen when I say it. 3. It's not blatantly for my own personal good. Trust me, I'm really watching my mouth these days after I ruined my college exams twice in a row last December. The first time this happened was 8 or 9 years ago during a really sunny day. For some reason I said, "Let's hope it rains soon." I'm not kidding, 5 minutes after it rained warm water. Redditor 39, my family and I were driving home from Disneyland in Anaheim, California, at around midnight. I was in the middle of the backseat trying to sleep. While on the freeway, my mom had told my dad that she was sleepy and she was going to close her eyes. She never does this, just in case my dad gets sleepy. My dad reassures her and says that he is wide awake and it's okay for her to fall asleep. A few seconds after she had closed her eyes, she opens them again and immediately yells my dad's name. My eyes burst open and I see it. There was a car going against traffic, half in the shoulder, half in our lane, with the hood flipped open covering the windshield. My dad swerves out of the way and we're all okay, just a bit shaken up. We don't see any police or anything. I did a Google search to see if anything was ever reported, but nothing. The following week my mom tells my uncle about this story and he says that the same exact thing happened to him at the exact same location. We still have no idea what actually happened. Redditor 40, this happened about a week ago in Norfolk Brant County in Ontario, Canada. My GF, her friend and I were driving to Hamilton when a bright red Jeep with a custom license plate cuts us off while pulling in front of us. I was pissed, but we duck it. Over the course of the next 40 minutes or so, this vehicle proceeds to swerve almost of the road, into oncoming traffic, and lots of braking, speeding and all sorts of other things that could indicate intoxication. So I called the police, As I am on the phone with the dispatch, I pass an OPP cruiser, so I told the dispatcher. 1 minute later, I pass another OPP cruiser, I again tell the dispatcher. After about 3 minutes of reporting this person, describing where I am and such, the dispatcher finally lets me off the phone. Then no action for about 10 minutes. So I'm pissed because I was expecting the cops to light this dude up and he continues to do sketchy shit while driving. Finally, when stopped at an intersection, one of the cruisers we pass goes flying by and lights this guy up. All is well, probable drunk driver off the road, and we go about our day and head to the mall. Shop for about 2-3 hours and start to head home. Now keep in mind, it's dark out by the point. As we're driving through the reserve on the way home, someone whips out in front of me. I'm talking like not even a question, I think I can make it, I'm talking not paying attention, drunk driver. I slam on my brakes and lay on my horn, come to a complete stop about 4 feet from this person's back end, and the vehicle behind me almost slams into me, same situation. Guess whose ducking car it was? Same red Jeep, with custom license plate. Since they were still on the road 3 hours later, I assumed they weren't drunk when the cops pulled them over earlier, and are just an absolute horrible driver. I wanted to call the cops again, but what are the chances of all of this happening? The police would probably assume I had it out for the guy for some reason. In retrospect, I should have called again, but like WTF. Redditor 41, once my mom was in the hospital and I went to visit her. I asked security how to get to her room. I followed his instructions. But when I got there, it was completely abandoned. Like something out of a horror movie. I got freaked out and went back downstairs. I told him what happened. He just looked at me like I was nuts. Then gave me the same directions. Very slowly. So I went upstairs again. Same thing happens. So I go back to his post. Now there's a different security guard. I told him what happens. And he's like, "Who told you that?" I'm the only one here. I'm almost in tears, but I have to see my mom. So after he calmed me down, he gives me the same directions. I go upstairs and there's nothing wrong. I have a visit with my mom. But all the way home, all I could think about was what happened earlier that day. Redditor 42, I told this story before, but I feel like spilling it again. When I was a kid, I was given a special bucket. It was an ordinary bucket, but it had my name on it, and I intended to keep it for the rest of my life cause it was special to me. In other words, had a lot of sentimental value. So one day we were packing to go to our cabin. I sometimes left buckets outside to collect rainwater just for the fun of it. I had left it outside and it was full of water, having rained a lot recently. I went to go inside the house for some reason while my dad loaded the car for the trip. I looked over before going inside and saw him carrying the bucket full of water. I thought it was kinda strange, cause wouldn't it make sense to dump out the water before carrying it off to put it in the car? He tends to do weird stuff sometimes though, so I didn't think too much of it. Later on, when the car was packed and everyone was in the car waiting to go, I looked in the back for the bucket expecting to see it there, as I had brought it with many times before. But it wasn't there. I kept looking thinking it was underneath something maybe. Then looked around outside in case my dad had put it down somewhere. Didn't see it. Left, got to the cabin, searched the whole car, still wasn't there. So while we were there, he randomly asked where the bucket was. He knew I always brought it with on those trips, so it was odd it wasn't there. And I told him I saw him carrying it towards the car before we left, so I thought he was going to pack it, but it wasn't there when I checked. He pretty much just gave me a deer in the headlights look without saying anything. He had no idea what I was talking about. I've had a few people say stuff like, "Nah, he threw it away," or something. But he wouldn't have done that. Anyway, after getting back home I looked around even more. To this day that bucket never showed up anywhere. Every once in a random while he'll ask me, "Whatever happened to that bucket you had?" He knew it was special to me. Sometimes I'll tell him and he'll just go, I guess he still has no idea. Redditor 43, when I was 10, searched my house 7 times for my other sock. I checked my room many times. And at the end, when I was beginning to give up, I walked to my room and I looked around. There was my sock, laying 2 feet away from my closet. WTF. So yes, about 1 month after writing this I left my phone on my bed, left to brush my teeth, came back, didn't find it, then I walked to the other room to grab my PJs, it's not far at all, just behind my wall near the door, came back and that beach was right there. 2302. Redditor 44. Yesterday during my class I looked down and a 10 centimeters piece of the tip of my shoelace was laying next to my shoe with a near perfect cut. I know for a fact that nobody could have cut it, and the cut itself looked like it had been done by a hot knife with melted tips. None of my friends knew what had happened. It's super bizarre. Redditor 45. I was at college one day, wandering to a bathroom before my next class. When I went inside the building the bathrooms were in, I saw someone who looked almost exactly like me, but opposite. We both had short dyed purple hair, except mine was swept to the right and theirs was swept to the left. We were both wearing the same face mask. I'm from California. This was when the Paradise fires were going on. We were both the exact same height. We had pretty much the same birthmark, on opposite cheeks, barely visible above our masks, mine on the left, theirs on the right. We were both wearing similar clothing, black hoodie and dark jeans. We kind of stared at each other as we passed, and then after we passed, we both turned around to look at each other at the same time before heading our separate ways. I wish I had talked to them, lol, it was weird as hell. Redditor 46. At a party in college I see this guy who looks a lot like my brother. He was looking at me a lot too. Finally, I go over and I say that he looks a lot like my brother. He pulls out a picture of his brother and shows me that his brother looks a lot like me. Redditor 47. I once dreamt years ago that the guy I was dating was in a blue truck, his was white, and he crashed into a ditch. When I woke up I learned my aunt's babysitter for my cousins was in an accident the night before, same night of dream. She was driving a blue car and some balloons she brought with her from a party got in her way and she crashed into a ditch. The dream involving my then boyfriend felt so real I had woken up feeling anxious to the point of tears, and it wasn't that I heard about it in convo between people while sleeping, say by means of suggestion, because I had learned of it as my aunt had later that day, so nobody knew until hours after my dream. Redditor 48. Put a maggot in my famously deep belly button when I was fishing as a kid. Never saw that maggot again. Redditor 49. Disclaimer, I was rolling on E in this one, but still it doesn't add up in my mind, as I'm pretty sure MDMA has little to no hallucinogenic effects. Anyway, I was high, cuddling a friend, and then went through all the steps of saying goodbye to those equally high friends as they left my house. Hugs and stuff. When I closed the door, I'm back to being on my bed, cuddling the same friend from the beginning. Everyone is still there, doing what we were doing before we parted ways. Immediate freak out. What the duck just happened? Everyone looks at me like I'm crazy or somehow way more high than they are. I tell them what happened and they tell me no one has left their spot for like an hour, and what's more, when I ask them if I fell asleep, they say I've been talking on with everyone since we got to my room. So what the hell's that all about? Time slip? Reality fault? Just being high? Sela. Redditor 50. My mother gave me a ring for my 19th birthday that she bought when she herself was 19. I took it off at the gym and put it in that little cup holder on the elliptical because it was rubbing the skin. Cue me forgetting it there. I remembered a half hour later and went back only for it to be gone. Heartbroken. Fast forward to the spring and my mom is working in the front garden. She calls me downstairs and she opens her hands.